The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Mr. Speaker, it's a great pleasure to speak here at the general debate here. We're in our last session in Parliament before the New Zealanders go out to enjoy the great summer that we have in New Zealand. It's a very strange environment in the House today. This is the first time I can remember coming along to question time and the Prime Minister's sitting there in his chair and nobody's asking him a question. The opposition are too scared to ask him a question. It's a bit like watching the cricket. It's like the Pakistan cricketers have worked out that there's no point bowling your deliveries at the best batsman. You're just going to get knocked over the fence for 6. And so they've stopped asking him the questions anymore. What an admission of defeat. Perhaps the leader of the opposition has decided that he's better to use his time trying to persuade Nick Leggett not to stand for the National Party rather than reflect the decline that we've seen these days in the Labour Party in New Zealand. So anyway, Mr. Speaker, New Zealanders, they'll be going off to their Christmases reflecting on the world as they see it, and they see uncertainty all about, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Europe, Korea, who knows what's going to happen with the massive expansion of credit that we see in China. There's much of uncertainty around there. And in New Zealand, we've also been reminded over the last couple of weeks of our geological vulnerabilities, and my thoughts are with the people of Kaikoura and the northern parts of the South Island as they've been through a difficult time, and it's reminded us of our vulnerabilities as a small country. We've also been reminded by the US election and the tendency around the world to think about trade protectionism as a way forward of our vulnerabilities as a small trading nation. And so there's a little bit to worry about in New Zealand, but then when we look at the performance of this economy and this country, you can't help but be filled with optimism. Mr. Speaker, the country is growing at the 4th fastest rate in the OECD, at 3.6% GDP growth. We've had 300,000 jobs developed in this economy since the global financial crisis. Mr. Speaker, that is a jobs boom that is unprecedented in New Zealand's history, an incredible jobs boom, and that's the result of the hard work and enterprise and vigour of New Zealanders setting up companies, developing their businesses, exporting around the world and delivering incomes for their fellow New Zealanders. The government can play a role in that, and that is about particularly in providing a stable, predictable and financially sustainable environment, which we've done for these past 8 years. We're one of the very, very few countries in the world that is delivering a surplus. That when people look and ask whether they're going to invest in a new business or take on a new job or buy a new plant, they can look and know that the government is sustainable in what it's doing. It's not going to have to veer off in a wildly new direction. Mr. Speaker, we're also concentrating on building the competitiveness of the New Zealand economy, and Aucklanders such as myself can look and see the massive investment that we've made making in infrastructure to get the economy moving, not just in transport. We're all looking forward to the Waterview Tunnel opening in the next few months. We see the ultra-fast broadband going into our streets, massive investment in infrastructure in order to get the economy growing stronger, and we're also concentrating on delivering better public services. That's not just what government's about. Government's also about preserving what is special in New Zealand, Mr. Speaker. We know about the enormous investment we're making in the environment to improve the environment and marine parks, and many great bits of work that my colleague Maggie Barry is doing on that score. We're also, this morning, we celebrated another treaty settlement, and that's another thing that's special about New Zealand, is that we get along pretty well in a very multicultural environment. And when you look around the world, there's so many areas where people within countries struggle to get along as well as we do in New Zealand. It's not perfect, but that's something we can celebrate. The other thing I do want to mention is that we have that strong tradition of high trust and low corruption and strong rule of law country. That is one of our greatest inheritances, and we as a government want to keep on chipping away to raise the bar. And I was pleased to announce today in my ministerial capacity some changes that we're making in the insolvency space, which is one little area where we've had fairly frankly loose arrangements around insolvency, where a lot of people, anybody could stand up, even if they've got a very checkered past and act as insolvency practitioners, which is a job which involves millions of dollars and requires high trust. And so we're bringing in a licensing regime there to clean up that area. And so we're looking forward to that, and we've got a great story to tell, and I wish New Zealanders the very best.